Hey all. Thanks for joining me, Dorothea, and my son, Nicholas. He goes by Nico. We are doing a wrap up of the war in the Middle East. We're going to try to do this every Saturday afternoon. So, going to wait and see who's in here. We have a couple people watching. There's so much to go over, guys. So it's going to take a little bit to go through all that. Let's see. Yeah, it's working. Okay. Wait just a couple minutes. Say hi, everybody in the chat. Hello. Thanks for joining me and my son. We've been watching a lot of videos over the week. There's so much information, it's hard to keep up with all of it. So we are going to try our best to give you what information we have. Hi, Ann. Well, blessed Lent to you as well, Vivi. Vigo. Nice to see you all here. Wow. Okay. We'll give it like a little bit more, and then we'll start. But I'm just giving you a overall view of what we'll be talking about. And there's much, like I said, to talk about. There's different things we're going to go into. We're going to go into just basic stuff that's happening. Then we're going to go into other news stories, clips, all kinds of things. Okay. Thank you. It's good to see you too. I mean, see you as we can see you, right? Okay. So anyway, we can go ahead and start here. We're going to start with just how the week went with the war. It was quite brutal. There's a lot of things that happened if you've been following. There's a lot of Gulf states, the bases there, the military bases, the U.S. military bases have been hit. I think most of them have been destroyed. Radar's been destroyed. Iran did this early on, I think, in the week. And the U.S. has been pummeling Tehran. I think there's over 1,000 deaths right now in Iran. We know that. Because Iran actually shared that. But you don't always, I'm going to give you some information from what I heard Colonel McGregor say. He said, we have never told the truth. We've always lied on the numbers of dead of our military in every single war. So we can't expect it to be what they say it's to be. We can't expect any other countries to be exactly right either, because during war, there's a lot of propaganda. So we know that, right? We know that it's not going to be accurate until later on. So
on that note, I do want to add,
sure.
I don't know how much you're aware, but apparently, supposedly, the Israelis have these cameras set up in Tel Aviv and stuff that's supposed to show incoming missiles in real time. But my big question on that is, I haven't been following it, but I know there have been people who have. And based on their reactions, it seems to make it out that Israel's not being hit that hard, even with their supposed live feed. So I'm not really sure what that's all about, but I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, there's a lot of censorship during the 12-day and this one. They don't want to show what's going on in Israel because they just don't want to look bad. It's my assumption, but it hasn't been good. We have seen some really hard hits into Tel Aviv and Haifa. Lots of destroyed buildings, rubble everywhere, burnt out cars, just a mess. And I know there was targeting of I heard it today, like an intelligence building of the Israelis that was targeted, but I don't know if it actually totally ruined that building. So we won't say. But I will start with the casualty issue. Like I said, okay, it's not going to be exactly right if you go by traditionally how this goes. Okay, so the U.S. is saying that they've lost 6 soldiers, 11 wounded. Now, if you've been watching what's been going on to the bases that weren't all actually evacuated, okay, especially in, I think it was the UAE, maybe it was Bahrain. There's a place they were housing our military moved out of the base and were housed in the high-rise hotels, which wasn't a good idea because then Iran actually hit those hotels. So there's that issue. There's I saw a missile hit the Prince Sultan, I think he's called, the one in Saudi Arabia. That one was wow. I saw the picture of that. I wish I had it up to show you, but it was the military members were fleeing from that. And, you know, there's a huge base in Saudi Arabia. I remember I was looking at X the other day, and there was somebody saying that on there that we had left the bases. He has to let one of the cats in. We have 3 cats, but you always see Cookie in my videos because she's my cat. But he had to let in his cat because she's she's making noise. So anyway, what they were saying is, oh, we left the military left the base in Saudi Arabia. I forget which one. I think there's a couple, but there's a huge base. Mind you, I'm trying to remember what the name of the base is where the Khobar towers were. This is important to tell you about because I know about this. I mean, I was married to a military man for 23 years, okay? And they're saying that base is not there. And I said, yeah, that base is still there as well as the other base in Saudi Arabia, okay? Apparently he left the base like a month before the Khobar towers were hit, and he was actually in those towers. He was actually stationed there in that particular spot, civil engineering. So he wasn't like in the main war, you know, he was just civil engineering, which means like structure and helping with tents and setting up things. He wasn't in the war zone or anything like that in any of his stuff. But anyway, it's important to say that, yes, those are still there. Those bases are still there. And apparently that was obvious by the hit the other yesterday I saw near Saudi Arabia's base. I mean, the U.S. base in Saudi Arabia, and they were fleeing. Why they were still there, I don't know. Maybe it's one of their main spots to do things. You know, I'm not an expert on that, but I'll tell you that's what happened there. First stream I've been able to catch alive. Oh, great. Well, I'm so glad you were. I was running around all day. I didn't know how I was going to get in here in time, but I made it. So we made it. And it's good that you all did too. Appreciate that. I just want to make that straight, that actually does exist. And so the U.S. said six dead, 11. Now she wants out. 6 dead. Just don't worry about her. 6 dead, 11 wounded. Now, do you think that's an accurate amount of dead? Not that I want it dead. I wish our soldiers never would have gotten into this war in the first place. I'm just saying, do you think that's really accurate when many more have been lost on the other side? And for instance, like Israel, they're saying 9 to 11. Last I heard, 11 people. 11 people, not really soldiers, just civilians, or people there in Tel Aviv and Haifa. Tel Aviv is getting hit more than Haifa right now, but Haifa has a port. I think Israel only has 2 ports, so if something happens to them, that's not going to be good for them. So I think, and then Iranians they report that, oh no, we've killed 650 of our soldiers. Now, of course, when I saw that, I thought, oh, it's probably not that high because, people are going to say what they're going to say. Okay. So I think it's somewhere in between. I think it's more like more than 11, more than 6 and 11, probably less than 600. Okay. So I'm thinking maybe a couple hundred. And when I looked that up, there's I looked this up in a search, and they're saying it's more likely it was like 200 to 400 of the U.S. military members that have been killed. Again, it's a waste because we shouldn't be doing this war. That's how I feel about it. But let's see. Fierce Saint Snail. It's scary. I got military friends. I fear that they have to get involved with this. Yes. There's something I needed to show on that. And let me see if I can. My problem is I have all these different places I have to find in my videos because I'm semi where I need to be, but there's actually something I need to show you before that regarding this issue of what you just mentioned. It reminded me. You know military. Yeah, you have military friends. Yeah, my nephew, my sister's stepson, is in Germany. I forget which base, but in Germany. So he's in the army. He wants to go into the Rangers, and I don't know if he actually has gotten into that yet. So in any case, this is an important piece. I'm going to try to bring up. It is such a waste. It seems all over the place. I'm going to try to bring up this particular part of the Judge Napolitano's show, the Intel Roundtable. There's a lot of pieces in there I want to share in there. Does she want out? No. Okay. Let's see what I can do here. Because I have it on another piece. Let's see if I can remember where this is before I jump over to the beginning section. Sorry about this. I didn't have much time to race and get all this done, but I do have. Where did I put that? Oh, here it is. 2416. 2416 is what we have here, which is a different thing. So it's too bad he doesn't have stamps on his, but let me see if I can. I'm going to just see if I can find this really quickly. Do you remember where it was?
What?
The part about the German hospital.
I think it was somewhere at the beginning.
Okay, let me see if I can find this. Oh, nice. Ads on this. Let me get past here. Okay, here it is. Okay, so I'm going to give you this information right here. Okay, so let me share this so you can see this. Okay, it didn't put me in there. What the heck? Oh, I'm in the wrong section. Duh. Okay. All right. I forget I have to go back and forth to get to this thing. I'm not very good at live streaming. Here's what they said, which is important for you all.
It's the Intelligence Community Roundtable with my two stalwart, steadfast colleagues and friends, Ray McGovern and Larry Johnson. Today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average went down 450 points. Oil is $90 a barrel. And after 1 week, the price of gas in New Jersey is up 40 cents a gallon. So where does the war stand today, Larry Johnson?
As far as the United States is concerned, not in a good position. News is coming across. So Stars and Stripe just published
Military newspaper.
a request for blood donors at a little town called Kaiserlautern, which is northwest of Stuttgart. Stuttgart is where the command headquarters for EUCOM and AFRICOM are. So Kaiserlautern is an army base. And the fact that they're calling out for blood donations is one part of the story. There's a hospital in Landstuhl in Germany that usually handles combat casualties. They have suspended their obstetrics, pediatric services because of pressing needs. So what this means is that despite what we're being told, that very minimal casualties, the casualties that are occurring in the Persian Gulf are much, much greater than the public has been told about. That seems to indicate this, or otherwise they're getting ready for more casualties. And on that front, there is a word out of Fort Bragg that the 82nd Airborne, who is supposed to have this command exercise starting Sunday or Monday, that has been canceled. Now, if you recall, on February 18th, I had a conversation with one of my old colleagues who still was involved with scripting terrorism exercises for JSOC and SOCOM. And they were supposed to start scripting on the 22nd of February. That exercise was canceled on the 22nd, and 6 days later, the war started in Iran. So there's been rumors afoot. I've got other reports out of Germany, which it doesn't make sense, but that U.S. forces are being deployed from Germany as well for ground action in or around Iran. This is madness.
Okay. I wanted to share that with you all. Not good news. When we heard that was so it's quite chilling. But again, it doesn't really match up with we have 6 U.S. military dead and 11 wounded by that information. So just keep that in mind, that the numbers are not going to be accurate when talking about such things.
Well, I think there's kind of I'd say a funny thing about this, because you have the government saying one thing, and then you have the military saying another. You have those that are in these areas that, there have been reports saying, oh, well, we don't have enough weapons, or, what was it they were talking about? Those in the Middle East were fighting with those in the Pacific, trying to get weapons.
Centcom with Pacific Com, basically.
Yeah.
That's because they wanted to take out the THAAD missile defense system, I think is what it is, from South Korea, where we have a lot of bases there. And the people there were saying, no, we need to have these for when we fight China. Gosh. Oh my gosh. So,
so, hearing the military, of course, being like, well, we need this, we need that, as they, as is expected of them, it really paints a bleaker picture, I think, of what's really going on for both, for us alone, and God knows what for Israel. It's just, it's not good. And all of this for me is very distressing, because again, we have people needlessly dying for what? Nothing really.
okay. So Fierce says, aren't they saying that Russia is involved now? Yeah, to a certain extent. I've heard Stanislav say that our Russian chips are in these particular weapons or defense systems or something. Can't remember exactly what he said. According to the professor, the Chinese professor who I listened to today, he's saying that Russia and Iran have a pact. So if Iran is attacked with any kind of tactical nukes or something, they're going to attack back. Russia, I mean. They're not going, basically they're saying they're not going to allow Iran to fall.
Mhm.
So that is an important thing. Now we know this prophetically. We know through the prophecies on that, but that's what they said. They're quite serious.
Well, I would add to that and say this is all that Russia is definitely not going to let anything happen to Iran, and why I believe we're seeing such strong wording coming from leadership and diplomatic leaders and or figures in Russia is because the whole Azerbaijan problem, which has historically been involved with Russia for a long time, then Trump butted in, and for the first time ever, Russia was not involved in that at all. So, and Azerbaijan and that whole corridor that they're in, charge of was extremely important for trade and stuff between Iran and Russia. So losing Iran here would not be of strategic interest for either Iran or Russia. So, yes, I'm not surprised by Russia's rather adamant stance.
The next thing I want to get into is this disturbing story that we've heard the last half of this week, probably midweek on, which was the craziness coming out of our administration with their Christian Zionism and weird. They have a distorted interpretation of the scriptures and these false doctrines of dispensationalism and rapture and all these things. And they just talked about that. And there's a article I'll share with you on that. And then there's actually actually, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to show Professor, how do you pronounce his name? Jiang. Yeah.
Oh, Jiang. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me go into that because it's quite disturbing. I mean, you all who have been following me for quite a while know that I did several videos on this NAR and Seven Mountains Mandate cults, which is NAR is the New Apostolic Reformation. It's basically a cult. They think that they can, conquer every little thing. I'm not just talking about that, war. I'm talking about, no, we're going to conquer whatever in the United States they feel like is not. It's owned by demons, and I mean the whole thing is crazy. I saw a video of her, Paula White, who's his advisor, who's basically, in my opinion, someone who's very much mentally not well. I do worry that maybe she is actually, how do I say this? Might be, I don't want to say totally possessed, but considering what part where you saw her talking in tongues, which we know is not
Look,
the way
look, I'm much more blunt than she is, so I'll say it this way.
Oh my gosh.
They're occultists and they act like occultists, and that's how I view them. I don't view them as Christian. Sorry, I just don't.
No. And what's dangerous, how many times have I done videos saying how dangerous false doctrine is? People think, well, it doesn't really matter what you believe. Oh, it's fine. Christians can think whatever they want to think on this. The problem is it leads to delusions. It leads to these ideas that hurt other people, as we see with this war. Okay. And I'll get more into that because there's a lot to it. Let me see what people are saying here. Oh, hi, Kiriki. Nice to see you again. I was just watching Mr. Slavic on YouTube, former retired U.S. officer. The Russians are involved. He asked, who do you think is plotting those planes?
Piloting.
Oh, piloting those planes. It takes 1 year of training. Yes, that's right, because they had to bring over some of their planes and they also had to bring over some of their defense systems, and they were working on that. They're also working on some what was it, a refinery or a nuclear facility. The Russians were down there in the south of Iran working on that too. She's definitely possessed. Yes, we just saw her. Somebody posted yesterday on what, I can't remember which video, I watched too many, and she was acting very unhinged, is a nice word. Yes, victory, 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 this whole thing. And it was very difficult to watch. Let's just say that. Proxy war, aka business as usual. That's right. Yeah.
Well, that's what we're trying to do with the Kurds in Azerbaijan, roping them in.
Apparently, on that issue, as you know, the CIA does this all the time. So they gathered up the Kurdish groups in Iraq. That's who they tried there, and then I forget where else. And they're thinking, oh yeah, could you go in and cause, disruption, instability, basically go in and some people call them terrorists. So, go in there and cause terror so that that it'll have to bring in the Iranian soldiers. I think the reason they probably want to do that, just my thought, is other than destabilizing, they could be doing that to distract the IRGC, I think it's the Iranian army, one of them, that if they distract them up there in the north, then our soldiers can come in from the south end of Tehran, near the Strait of Hormuz, which we keep saying we're going to try to. So if they go in there, then they think, oh, we can get in here through the mountainous regions and whatever, and do what they, I guess, want to do there. Well, the Kurds, the way I understand it, I've heard this several times now, that they have declined doing that. They don't want to do that. So maybe they've learned their lesson, because they only end up being cannon fodder for us. Yeah. It doesn't help they always get stabbed in the back. They don't ever get any property, any land for themselves. So I think they learned.
I mean, again, I would say just look at what's happening right now still in Ukraine and where the Ukrainians are at, where, they're a proxy for the West, and look how that's going for them. If the Kurds and such were smart, they wouldn't do that.
Hey, how's it going, Aegean? Nice to see you. I don't know what time it is there, but I'm glad you're able to come on. That's great.
I'd like to read one of these comments, because it kind of, I feel like I can resonate with it here. Fierce Saint Snail says, Father Seraphim talked a lot about the demonic root of tongues and religion of the future. And yeah. I want to say, yes, I've read that whole book and enjoyed it quite thoroughly. I really have a lot of respect for Father Seraphim Rose.
Yes.
And I've read quite a bit of his stuff. So, yeah, this is why when I say with these things and how they're acting, I call them more of like the occult, because that's Father Seraphim Rose made a lot of parallels between the two. And that's why I say that. And so that's where I get that from.
Now, I want to bring up something I nearly forgot about. I forget. Every time I do a show, I forget something. One or two things. Then I go, so then I have to come back. So there's this issue of the false flags, okay, that are going on. We found out, I've heard it during the week, but it's been more substantiated. It's more confirmed. Okay, so the one where they were blaming Iran for hitting the particular oil refinery, I think it was in Saudi Arabia, was not Iran, because Iran said they didn't. Why would they? That wouldn't be a good move for them. They are not there to do that. They're there to go and strike U.S. targets. It's found out, according to Tucker and his sources, both the Qatari government, I guess, and the Saudi have arrested a couple, I don't know how many, Mossad agents. Now, for me, I wasn't surprised, because that's how Mossad is. Okay, if you know their background, this is their modus operandi. What happened is that was them, okay? Because they want to cause an uprising of the Gulf states who are under the thumb of the West, and also I'll get into the other part, is so that they have more, so that Iran has to fight more people, basically. Also, this was a surprise because I did a report on this, but I'm sure some of you are not going to be surprised with this. I mean, once I heard it, I was like, oh. So remember I did that video on the strike, supposedly from Iran. Oh, their missiles went all the way to Cyprus and struck the British base. Well, that turned out to be Mossad as well. I just found that out past few days from Larry Johnson, the CIA analyst. So,
well, you know why that was, right? Because I think I know what you're talking about, because it was about what was it, Diego Garcia's that whole place. And that's because Starmer was basically saying, well, we don't really want to be involved, you know, but if there's a need for defense, and so they didn't want it used for, you know, aggressive attacks. They only wanted it to be used for defense. Well, that's why they fired that on there, to make it seem like, oh, see, you need to use it for defense. Again, Israel is, I think
the way I understood it, according to Larry Johnson, was that was to try to provoke NATO to come in.
Yes.
Okay. So that is what happened there, just to give you some information. Now, on this whole craziness of Armageddon and Jesus returning, which was really, this is one of my hot, I guess, pressing my buttons things, as I don't like when this type of stuff happens from a Christian faith, because it's so off and it's so dangerous. So let me put in what this is. I'll bring it up here a second.
There we go.
This is what initially said. They were told Iran war is for Armageddon, return of Jesus. Anyway, this picture is just hideous. But anyway, let me get to exactly what they said. Yeah, complaints came from more than 40 different units spread across at least 30 military installations. So the NCO, this person that reported this first off, he said their commander, quote, urged us to tell our troops that this was all part of God's divine plan. And he, pardon me, specifically referenced numerous citations out of the book of Revelation, referring to Armageddon and the imminent return of Jesus Christ. And Pete Hesek, he is one of the worst. Let me go back into this. This is really upsetting. It's insane. And it gets worse than that, because I have something to share with you on that. Oh, I have the thing on Ray McGovern too. Having a coughing attack. Okay.
Goodness. You don't have your water.
It's somewhere around here.
Yeah, I'll get it.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. This is what Professor Jiang, is that how you say it?
Yeah, Jiang.
He brought this up. I was listening to it today, which I found very interesting. Okay, let's see. I'm going to start it here.
The traditional understanding of how wars are fought, why they're fought, I don't think you can use them anymore. Okay, I think we're living in a very special time. And the framework that I think you have to use is eschatological, religious. They're doing this not to win wars, to control resources, to obtain oil, to control trade routes. They're doing this for religious purposes, to achieve a certain world that they believe will reflect the divine will of God. So there's a news item where a commander told his troops, this is the American commander, and he told his American troops to not be afraid of this war in Iran. And the reason why is that this war will bring about the second coming of Jesus. Trump is divinely ordained. Okay, God picked him in order to start a war in the Middle East that will lead to a chain of events that will bring about the second coming of Jesus. I know this sounds crazy, okay? But keep this in mind, because what's going to happen in the next few months or next few years will even be more crazy. All right. So one thing that's really worrying is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is the third holiest site in the Muslim world. Only Mecca and Medina are even more holy. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is where Muhammad ascended to heaven. And there's talk that there'll be a false flag where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is destroyed. And why would it be destroyed? Well, because the Al-Aqsa Mosque sits on a site of the Second Temple, or Solomon's Temple. Okay, and that is considered the holiest site in the Jewish tradition. It is where God lives, right? So if you want God to return to the world, you need to build him a nice home. And that is Solomon's Temple, the third temple they call it. And so they need to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. If you destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque, this will ignite a religious war between the Muslims and the Jews. Every Muslim will be morally obligated to seek jihad against Israel if you were to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So why would they do that? Okay, I'm not saying they're going to do that, but I'm saying like things are going to happen. Things may happen that make absolutely no sense. And what I'm telling people, okay, is first of all, get in the mindset wherever you believe about the world, it's going to be thrown out the window, okay? Because if you just use conventional logic to analyze this war in Iran, it makes no sense. Even today, a week after the war started, even though a lot of damage has been done, even though a lot of people have been killed, no one knows why this war is being fought. Trump and his people have not articulated any real reason why they seek to destroy Iran. The most we have is, at first, Trump is like, okay, we want to get rid of nuclear weapons. We want to get rid of the possibility that Iran engages in uranium enrichment. But the Omanis, who are mediating these talks between the Americans and the Iranians, have already told us that the Iranians had already agreed to zero, absolutely zero uranium enrichment, which is something that they were adamant about for the longest time, right? They said, we are willing to forever forgo our uranium enrichment program, before they insisted that we are empowered to use uranium enrichment for civilian purposes. And they're like, okay, fine, we'll give that up as well, okay? But not only that, but they relay to the Omanis that, hey, not only are we willing to give up our uranium enrichment program, but we're also willing to negotiate about our proxies, Hezbollah, the Shia militias, Hamas, and the Houthis, but we're also willing to negotiate our ballistic missiles program. The Iranians were willing to give Americans everything that they demanded, which were impossible demands to begin with. And the Americans still attacked. So please explain to me that, okay? That's point number one. Then point number two is, Trump then said that, okay, where we attacked because, well, Israel was going to attack first, and we know the Iranians would respond by attacking us, so we had to preempt the Iranians by attacking them first, okay? But then you're like, why didn't you just tell the Iranians not to attack then, right? You are the superpower. You're the ones financing Israel. You're the ones giving Israel all the weapons it has. Just say, if you attack Iran, you're on your own, all right? And now what they're saying is, well, it's because we're controlled by Israel. Are you really telling me a nation of like 9 million people in a desert is able to control an empire of like 330 million people? That's complete utter nonsense, okay? So all the reasons that they're giving us make no sense. It's all lies. It's all deception, okay? What they really want to do is destroy the world. That's what they really want to do. They want to destroy the world because that will force Jesus to return. That is part of Christian Zionist eschatology. And again, you don't have to believe me, okay? But like, ask yourself this. First of all, like, why is this war continuing? Okay, number one, why is this war continuing? Okay. Number two is, why is Trump asking for unconditional surrender? Why is he refusing to negotiate at all? Number three is, why would America want to send in ground troops? Like what's the purpose of that? I mean, like, aren't you destroying Iran from the air already? Why do you have to send in ground troops, man? Number three, okay. And then what you'll see later on is the destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The plan is this, okay? There's this diabolical plan where Israel will destroy this mosque, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, but they will pretend it's an Iranian missile, okay? So somehow they're going to embed Mossad operatives.
That is really
Iran
believable.
to fire a ballistic hypersonic at this Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Okay, I gotta take a break because it's a long thing. I suggest you watch that whole video. I will be doing another video on something he says later that's extremely important. He has a lot of good things to say. So let me just say what he said. Their rule, their agenda, their what they really want to do is destroy the world to start over, and which is the same as what he's saying to Davos, the whole you'll own nothing and be happy thing. But yeah, it's disturbing about and then the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Yeah, I mean, if you follow St. Paisios's, he said, well, he calls it, there's the Mosque of Omar he brings up, but this mosque, we hear a lot about them doing the temple and all that as well.
Another thing I would like to add, from a book I was reading when I was in high school. I was in a journalism class and such, and we had to read it, some books that pertained to certain world events, and I kind of went down a whole rabbit hole into issues and conflict in the Pacific, and I grew very interested in that. And one of the things that I remember reading when they were explaining a lot of the behind the scenes of the atomic bomb and why it was used on Japan and all that. One of the things that I thought was really interesting that came up when interviewing some of the generals and high-ranking military people at that time was that they were very adamantly against certain actions in war. Despite popular belief, the military was not for the atomic bomb, and they were not for air raids. That at that time, that was considered unethical in war because it dragged in innocent civilians, which used to be not permissible. Now, I mean, when the professor there was kind of bringing up that, we kind of got to throw out, he's right. This has been degrading since World War II. This whole concept of how war must be fought and that there's some rules and stuff to it. Well, that's gone out the window since then. So, and those generals and such warned of that. They said that if you're willing to do that here, it's not going to get any better later. So, and they're right. And that's what we're seeing now. And what's even worse is we're seeing these crazy people that are, it's so funny that the hypocrisy to me that I'm seeing is here we are talking about the Ayatollah and their crazy religious stuff. And he's an extremist, is a religious extremist. And we'll
get into him
and all that. And I'm just saying, well, what does that make us? Here we are doing very similar things that you're accusing this person of. Except now you're dragging in all these other places into this war. So
there's one other video. I want to give you Ray McGovern's take on this, but I have to show you the video that the judge shared. That's I will warn you, it's not pretty. I mean, he was warning them that he was bringing it up. It was pretty icky, but let me see what I can do here. It's the Intel one. It is 2416.
2416. Okay, there it is.
Sorry. I'll be back here in just a second. Gotta get rid of this. Okay, so I'm going to bring this up now. We're going to see what he's going to show them, and then what is said. This woman is not well. Okay.
Larry, I don't want to ruin your afternoon.
Okay, is this Lindsey Graham coming?
What I'm going to show you now, believe it or not, is worse than Lindsey Graham.
I can't
This
imagine.
is former Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann,
No.
cut number 14,
I
Chris.
commend Donald Trump. I commend Benjamin Netanyahu. I truly believe, Greg, maybe we can talk about that a little later, but I truly believe that God ordained these two men to be the leaders of those nations at this exact time for this exact purpose. We've all been given an opportunity to bless Israel. If we bless Israel, like I believe President Trump is doing now, then we will be blessed. I truly believe America is going to be blessed from this effort. And likewise, if we turn our back on Israel and curse them, then we're cursed as a nation. And the Bible bears that out. Again, there's only one criterion upon which nations are judged. That's how nations treat Zion. So at this moment, we have to do everything we can to ensure that President Trump has a House and a Senate that will work with him to advance peace and prosperity in America by being pro-Israel. So that's why the primary is extremely important.
Well, she would benefit from a conversation with Jeffrey Sachs. I thought the last time you had Jeffrey on, you did an excellent job, and he gave quite an exegesis of the Jesus and the relationship between the so-called Third Temple. Understanding what that covenant relationship with God. It wasn't a blank check where Israel could do whatever the hell it wanted without regard. It was an obligation that if you're going to have a covenant relationship with God, that means you don't go out and act like the devil. And it's worth noting that the Jewish establishment at the time, they killed the one man that was embodying something that was saying, let's move away from this concept that there's just one group of special people, but that God loves all people. And as they say about Jesus, you can't keep a good man down. He got up after 3 days. So this, it's absurd when you get people like Michelle Bachmann. I remember her attempts to feign Judaism. She one time called it, hey, they got some chutzpah. Went, you mean chutzpah? But she called it chutzpah.
Let me chime in here because I know a little bit about this. I've read Matthew 25 several times, but I didn't see in there that the price of admission to heaven is whether you support Zionism. That's what Michelle Bachmann said. The way the people support Zionism is the way they get into heaven. That's how God blesses them. In other words, Christian Zionism is an oxymoron.
Mhm.
You can't be both.
Mhm.
And my great pain stems from the fact that religious leaders, such as they are these days, can't call a spade and say, this is contrary not only to the Hebrew scriptures, but to the Christian scriptures. This is a lot of hogwash. And when you have Tucker Carlson saying, look, this is about the Third Temple. Everybody, come on, Tucker. And then he shows the patches on all these Israeli uniforms. There's a picture of the Third Temple, okay? That's what it's all about, folks. Our young kids are being sent to die for Zionism.
Wow. Well said, Ray. Well said. So that was what I had to show you all on this particular issue of this terrible idea of going to war because you're going to force, remember, what is it? Force or evoke God to come. The second coming is dangerous. Okay, we're never supposed to even guess, not even think about when he's returning other than for our repentance, to think of repenting. And I think the reason why they do that is because of their view of the rapture. So they think, we're going to destroy the world, and then we're going to float away. Sorry, this really irritates me to no end.
I mean, the whole thing from the rapture, when I was taking global Christianity back in high school, and because it was a Mennonite school, but I had to learn about all these things about stuff in Christianity. I mean, it was just some old woman's dream or whatever that was spread by some lawyer or whatever. And
Yeah, I think her name was Margaret MacDonald or something like
Yeah.
that. She was a Scottish woman. She
Yeah.
had a dream, and they ran with that
Yeah, and so there was no
in the 1800s.
Yes, there was no, they go on and on about scripture, this scripture, that, but that didn't come from scripture, So,
Yeah, we remember they call us our faith, the Orthodox faith, is the traditions of man. It's not what God has revealed to us. Yet they have these doctrines.
Look, let me just put it this way. When I hear these things, okay, when I hear about, oh, these people are ordained by God to do this stuff, and that we need to bring Jesus back and all of these things, what I hear and see in my mind is someone drawing a pentagram on the floor and doing a blood sacrifice to summon God or a demon. That's what
Wow.
I see. This is the
Wow,
same
okay.
thing these people are doing. It's essentially the same thing, because you are trying to invoke through bloodshed, through sacrifice, to get what you want. And God does not respond to that. He was very clear about what sacrifice was pleasing to him, if we want to look at that. And that's what the Eucharist is today. So there is no other form of that. So this idea from these supposed Christians, as I like to call occultists, that, this is what's going to bring God back. No, this is what's going to unleash things like the Antichrist and Satan upon the world. That's
Not that he's not already.
well, that's not,
here,
yeah.
but-
But what
I
I'm
mean,
saying,
Satan is working really, really well in the world right now. But
well, you're just, you're not providing any resistance. You're just letting them have, a runway.
well, and let's not forget what Michelle Bachmann said. Oh, yes, we have to bless Israel. Then we'll be blessed. And we're just supposed to erase everything that Israel has done to the Palestinians. And I'm not in the genocide, but I'm talking since 1948. People don't want to know the history of this. That I was watching a video of Hegseth at this podium that it said the King David Hotel. And all I can remember from that is when the Izzies blew up the King David Hotel when the British were still there, because they're the ones that granted that land, killed I don't know how many. They dressed as Arabs and then blamed it on the Palestinians. And this is why, that's another false flag. This is why this is their history. You cannot pretend like that is not real life of that, how they've been. There's been extremists leading that country for a long time because they have this agenda, as I said, of what? Of bringing about greater Izzy.
Well, again, I know we go on about the hotel bombing, which of course was terrible. So many people died and all that. It was horrible. But I don't see enough people talk about the Munich. I mean, I hear them talk about the Munich massacre, but they don't talk about the operation that Israel then did afterwards, which was rather terroristic and extreme when you look at what happened. And they called it Operation Wrath of God. And you can look into it. And it's quite disturbing the way that they put telephone bombs, bombs under tables, bombs in cars, and blew up people. I mean, like terrorists do that, as we, label them. And yet we don't call Mossad and all that a terrorist regime. But they broke international law, did not notify the leaders of all the countries they infiltrated to do this. So these people don't care about law. They don't care about order. They just want to do whatever they feel they're justified to do. And I think that's very dangerous to have a power that doesn't want to do, to follow the laws in place internationally. I mean, we do that as well, but I don't know to that extent. That's so horrendous. I mean, we've done a lot of bad things ourselves,
Well,
but
remember, we're the only ones that dropped atomic bombs
yes.
twice. Once was a good enough. Anyway, I'm going to go on. I just want to tell you that, as you probably know, in the scriptures, they warn never to be going on about when Christ returns. That's why I'll never talk about it. I never talk about it because I really feel like one would be damned to do that. That's the way I feel about it.
Well,
I don't want to. I don't want anything to do with that. I'm just like
the way I see it is that's like talking about wanting your death to come, right? Because we don't know the hour of our death, but then like you're trying to be like, oh, I want to die or whatever, so I can go to heaven. And we're not. God doesn't want us doing that there, and He certainly doesn't want us doing it for His second coming.
Well, the next thing I'm going to get into, some people might not like this, but I have to explain to you where I'm coming from regarding the Ayatollah, because people still believe that a lot of people here still believe what was told to them for the past 40 years. And it's not accurate. The coup in 1953 took out the first democratically elected, what do they call them? Premier president?
It was like a prime minister.
Yeah.
So
what's his name? Mossadegh? And we need to know the truth of this, people. It's a thing. Why do you think I feel this way? I'll tell you why I feel this way. Why I don't see things that a lot of people see in this manner. And I'll tell you why. Because I grew up in a very conservative household. Okay. My dad was a judge and my mother was a housewife. And she's from Greece. He was in the military. He was from America. And I grew up seeing, I'd go on road trips in my later years, late teens, and I'd be listening. Dad would be listening to Rush Limbaugh. Dad would be listening to Gordon Liddy. Daddy would be listening to that. And I love my dad. But he's very, very conservative. He was all for William F. Buckley. He watched Crossfire. He did all that. And so I grew up seeing that. And I had a belief that I shared his beliefs because, I didn't really have a belief of my own then, obviously, at those age groups. But from my adulthood, from when I could vote, 18 through age 40, I was hardcore conservative Republican. I did not watch anything, I'm not joking, but Fox News. Didn't watch any other news network because I thought they were all not true. Now, of course, I realize they're all wrong. But back then, I was very, very much tunnel vision, believed everything that was spoon-fed to me. I believed everything our government said. Very naive, very gullible I was. And so when the Iraq War came, I was, yay, for George Bush, I voted for him, and I voted for this after 9/11. It was disgusting how I was at that time. Oh, well, aren't you worried about all the Iraqis killing? Oh, no, it's collateral damage. That's how I was back then, okay? I was not really opening my mind to the truth at that time, and I was too much involved in that. So when I started to come closer to the church, and at that time, I started to be dedicated to God more, and I wasn't. It took me 10 years to get into the Orthodox mindset. Okay, it's not something that just happens quickly. For most people, you have to give 5-10 years. All right, and so I changed because I became close to God. Then I was involved in the church. I was the director of outreach. I was the director of the church school. I was a church school teacher. I was doing all of these things, and I was focused only on Orthodox stuff. And that is when God was able to open my mind, because I was too shut before then. And some things that I was thinking at the time, I realized were wrong. My worldview it was distorted. It wasn't right. And then when a few years later, I don't know why I did this. I just stumbled upon the first time. I don't even remember how this happened, but I'd already started learning some issues about, because I was a rabid supporter of Israel then, mind you. I was hook, line, sinker, all of that at that time. And then I started learning more around that time about what really happened to our soldiers that were done by the Izzies. And me being a military child, that really ticked me off. I was angry, okay? And then, because we found out that the barracks, the Marine barracks, Larry Johnson even put, but that was not Hezbollah. It was a group called Mall. So there's a lot of these distortions, the propaganda out there. It's huge. And then I learned, I just stumbled upon a video on the 9/11 thing, and that changed me forever. You can't unsee you can't unlearn what you learned. So for me, once you hit that, you look at everything with skepticism in the news and what's happening and what is your government really doing. And it's been a pattern for decades.
Mm-hmm.
The same pattern. They don't even change it up. Okay. So this is why I'm going to show you about the Ayatollah. I have a few videos on this that I thought were important to share. Now, which one was that I was going to do first? Oh, here's something that's important from Scott.
The fact is, the day he initiated these negotiations was the day after he agreed upon the date to attack Iran with Benjamin Netanyahu when he visited us. They had already made the decision. We lied. And again, I just want to remind people that, these details are important. Perfidy is a war crime. Okay, perfidy, that hiding behind a flag of truce, is a war crime. Not only have we carried out an illegal war of aggression, and again, Justice Jackson, who is the prosecutor at Nuremberg,
Lord have mercy. Sorry, this live thing
has said that he's the guy who prosecuted the German war criminals, hung several of them. The greatest war crime is the crime of an illegal war of aggression, because from that all other crimes emanate. The United States has just committed an illegal war of aggression, a surprise attack. How many people out there on December 7th hang your head and say a prayer for those who perished in Pearl Harbor when the Imperial Japanese fleet carried out a surprise attack, a day that will live in infamy, President Roosevelt said, and a day that should live in infamy? Well, we just trumped that, because what we did is, under the flag of truce, carried out a surprise attack against Iran that assassinated Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader. Now, for the people out there who aren't familiar, he is Iran is an Islamic republic. The supreme leader is the head jurisprudent. They call it the Vilayati Faqih. He's the head jurisprudent of the faith. He is the equivalent to 12er Shia, which is a faction of the Shia faith, the major faction in Iran, Iraq, and elsewhere, of the Pope for the Catholic Church. So this is like us carrying out a surprise attack against the Vatican to kill the Pope. This is like the Archbishop of Canterbury for the British. We just killed him. It's like Kirill, the head of the Orthodox Church for the Russians. We just killed him. We killed a major religious figure that resonates deeply with these people, because they are, after all, the Islamic Republic. This is the man who issued a fatwa. Remember, President Trump says he doesn't want a nuclear bomb. This is the man who issued the fatwa, which has been recognized not only by Barack Obama when he signed the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, back in 2015, where he recognized that we recognize Iran has a religious fatwa or edict that prohibits them from developing nuclear weapons. We take this seriously. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence for Donald Trump, made the same statement before Congress, and she mentioned the fatwa. She said, there's a fatwa. We have seen no political move by the Iranians to reverse this fatwa. Therefore, there's no evidence of them pursuing a nuclear weapon. The guy who issued the fatwa in 2003 and kept it relevant, we murdered, we killed. And now they replaced him with somebody who says, maybe that fatwa is not all it was. And
Yeah. Important piece there. It's important to understand the equivalent People don't understand the Iranian government either. They don't understand how it works. Nicholas has learned a lot on that. He can share that with you.
Yeah, I'll give a little bit of Mom. You shared a lot of your background and how you were, and I was fortunate enough with the high school that I went to that we had actual international students from different countries in Africa, different countries in the Middle East, different countries in Asia, because my high school had a dormitory, which is, of course, highly unusual. But because of that, I was exposed to a lot of different perspectives that, of course, weren't pro-American or exactly this. There was no rose-tinted glasses, okay? It was very much, and my school made sure to respect that and understand to share those perspectives quite openly and educate us on the truth, okay? And so here's the reality when I was taking comparative government and learning about Iran's government system. It is not like most systems in the Middle East. This whole idea that we can just take out the supreme leader and it's all just going to collapse is ignorant. That is not how the government works. It's, as Scott Ritter said, he is a religious leader that has immense weight in decisions, and can help steer the decisions of a government in a certain way when it comes to religion, things pertaining to religion. I liken it to how Kirill is in Russia and in the Orthodox Church's influence right now in Russia in what decisions are being made. They don't run the government, but they have strong influence. If you got rid of,
Well, they're advisors.
yeah, if you got rid of Kirill, it would not stop that. The Russian government would not collapse. We know this. It's the same thing in Iran. And this whole idea that, the Shah was so great, no. I can tell you when I was learning comparative government, no, he was not good. It was horrible. It was better before that happened. I don't think people understand that when he was in place, there was a lot of really bad stuff that happened, okay? And the British intelligence and the CIA and such put the Shah in there. They took out the leader that Iran, the people of Iran wanted in there, and they put their own, because this is a whole other thing about the conflict of the Middle East and the tensions there during the Cold War and the significance of it, which we're seeing echoes of today. We're still seeing the residue of that. So that's why it's important to understand.
Britain's ruling in the Middle East at that time.
Yes.
Before we took over.
Exactly. For me, when I see a lot of these things, I see a lot of people that don't really understand a lot of the nuance and stuff, and that the revolution that happened was because people really didn't want the Shah in there, okay? Because it was catering, again, as intended, to the West. It was not catering for the people of Iran.
And then there were the executions going on.
Yes.
There were people being killed. That's what you hear now, but that's what was going on when we had put in. Look, every time we put in somebody, when we do regime change, they're worse.
Yeah.
They're dictators. Okay.
Yeah. And like I said, my classes there did not mince words on this and made it very apparent that everything that happened was essentially our fault along with Britain. So us causing this instability. So this whole idea that we were helping and making things so great is a Western lie. And there's a lot of lies. There was a lot that I went through and learned while I was in that school that I realized there's not really a whole lot of truth that comes out of America and the Western world in general. They lie and lie and lie, and basically try to egg on the people to go along with whatever they want. And now I don't have as much, I would say, knowledge or as deep of an interest in the Middle East. I'm more interested in Eastern Asia,
Yes, well, we'll get into that.
and we'll get into that later. But I just wanted to share the things that I had learned on that.
Yes, so it's important because people they don't understand that there's actually like a parliament, and there's the president in Iran. They have all these parts. It's not like what I keep hearing from the U.S. government. Oh, we killed the leader of Iran. No, he was the leader of the religious people.
Yeah.
And I don't think people understand, again, as he compared it with others that have this. So I found it very despicable because of the fact that I don't think anybody should be killing anybody's spiritual leaders. I think that you should have respect for other people's, especially like, I'm against anybody bombing sacred sites. I'm against that. I don't care what it is other than Satanism. Obviously, I wouldn't be doing that. But I mean, like, I don't like, for instance, I don't like people digging up and go messing up burial grounds for the Native Americans. I don't like people, bombing any house of worship. I find that very disrespectful, inhumane, and a disregard for other people's beliefs and for their traditions. That's what bothers me about that.
And I just want to say, I don't know if we're going to look at that, but there was a video with on the Danny Davis's show, or Daniel Davis, with Nima, who talked.
Oh no, I don't have that up, but
we should try to find that and put in the link in
Yeah.
the description of this video. I highly recommend, if you want an Iranian talking about the history and the Shah and why people did the revolution and why there were uprisings now against the current thing and all that, he gets into all of that very well, better than I could personally. So because there's a lot of, as he rightfully points out, and what I'm trying to get at myself is, it's very complicated, and it's not they're good, this is bad, yada yada yada. There's a lot of complications, as expected in any country. This is how it often is. And so I would recommend that. He has family there. In fact, he was just visiting there and left not long after, not long before the war started. So
there's another video. I'm going to show you a little bit of Alex Craner on this issue as well. And then one other piece that I think was important from Dennis Kucinich. So I'm going to bring that up.
Before we close, Nima, I have to say, a lot of people who
join the Colorado Springs Philharmonic and relive the Latin pop explosion in La Vida Loca.
Support this war against Iran, or who are on the fence, they're not sure how they feel. I find that they often hold these beliefs because somehow they perceive the Iranian regime as a very dark, medieval, repressive regime. These people don't dress like us. They look different. They talk different. So I would advise people to listen to what they say. Donald Trump, to his shame, after killing Grand Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, said that he was one of the most evil people in history. That's unforgivable. But some people, because he looks different, he's a mullah, they think, they believe it without questioning it, without really knowing. You have the social media, you have the internet. Hear some of his speeches, understand who he was, and then you can decide for yourself whether you think he was evil or not. But you can contrast the words he pronounces with Trump's words, with Pete Hegseth's words, with Randy Fine's words, with Benjamin Netanyahu's words, with Ben Gvir's words, and then you can decide who's evil and who's not evil. But we need to sober up. We need to be very sharply discerning. Otherwise, without discernment, we become rabid crusaders again.
Well said, Alex.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So that I thought was important to play because boy, hit home, didn't it?
Well, this reminds me so much of, I really loved listening to Putin's talks at certain schools in Russia back when it was allowed on YouTube, and then Ukraine war stuff happened, and then they scrubbed all of that off, and I wasn't able to hear what the leader was saying. You know, I really like listening to leaders of other countries and hearing what they're saying. And I think a part of that, of course, was in my comparative government class. I grew to understand that the whole point of that class was understanding that each country has a unique government system. That doesn't mean it's any less than a democratic system or a republic or whatever. It just means that they have their own ways that they've developed that works best for the region, culture, the way the people are, and things like that. And we were taught to try to have respect and understanding. Of course, there's problems in every system. Of course, there's going to be people that are disgruntled or upset, or there's going to be things that are unfair. And you know, we see this in America and other European countries. There's issues, and so for me, I don't see why we're acting as if it's so unusual. My view is, well, they're just like us. We all have our own issues, and we really should be focusing on cleaning up our own doorstep instead of going over to our neighbors and pounding on the door and demanding that their front lawn be cleaned or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and talking.
Thank you, Taro Man. He gave me a super sticker or whatever that is.
A super chat.
A super chat thing.
Thank you so much.
That's the first one I ever got. Thank you. You're number one on this. I appreciate it.
The last thing I want to say is when Alex Craner was talking about the Crusades, this has been a very big thing that's been coming up for me. I'm very concerned about something akin to the Crusades returning. And, I really don't want to see that again. That was really horrible for certain groups of people. It was very oppressive, and there was a lot of bloodshed. And, again, and I want to clarify that, I feel bad for both the people in Iran and the people in Israel and anywhere else that are being affected by this because of the choices of the West that are oppressing and forcing these things to happen one way or another.
It's always the people in charge. They have the power. No regular citizens don't.
So, I often urge that we try to be understanding, and even those, and also to not be angry at those who believe. There's this one person I've been watching, and I don't want to say who it is, but it's clear in his own way he's concerned about the people of Iran, but he's really falling in line completely with what the mainstream news and the government here in America is telling him. And he believes that the government of Iran is, again, bloodthirsty, evil, must be totally eradicated by any means necessary. But the reason he feels so strongly is rooted in that he thinks that this is really, truly to help the people of Iran. So when there's someone like that, I do think instead of being really angry at them, I think it's better to try to be understanding and realize the good in what they are saying is that even if it is misguided and it is, pushing violence as an answer, the point is that I think their heart is trying to reach the same place that we're at. It's really just a matter of the path that they're taking is a little bit going down the wrong way. But
no, I'll just say, because I probably don't want to have too much time to do that. There's so many videos I still have to do. So I'll just say, former Congressman Dennis Kucinich said, we assassinated a religious leader. I mean, it sounds so horrible, and it is. Okay. So he said the repercussions are going to be bad. But if we listen to what Professor Jiang said, we seem to be wanting to do this so we can bring about Armageddon anyway, right? Our admin does, right? So I'm going to say one other thing is people are like, oh, well, Islam is a false religion. Okay, yeah. We Christians realize that they don't have Christ. It's a false religion. So is Hinduism. So is all the others out there. And so is Judaism. People don't understand. People actually think, oh, well, they like to connect Judaism. But What's the difference between Judaism and Islam? They both have the one God in the sky who did not come in the flesh on earth to save us. Okay, so we have what always bothers me. I just get so angry is that we go after the Muslims that are trying to eradicate the terrorists, but see, the terrorists are our proxies. So there's ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and all these others that we use, right? I guess the Kurds, if you want to consider them terrorists. So that's a problem to me, is that why do you always go after the ones that are trying to do the right thing? Am I cutting out?
Oh.
Might be the I've been on for a while. But anyway, so that bothered me because I'm like, well, why do you do these people that aren't really the ones? Now, these are Shia. Shia aren't even the ones that are mostly are the ones that actually cause that there are the terrorists. It's mostly the Sunni. But let's know that the Shia have respect and honor for Jesus and his mother. In fact, she's the only, there's a whole chapter in the Quran about Mary, and she's the only woman in the Quran, okay? So let's remember that. What do we have from the Jays? How did they treat Jesus and his mother? Think about that. Think about that. So we'll go on to a part that is what John Helmer said to Dima, so Nicholas can explain the Chinese perspective.
It was a great pleasure to have you on. And one of our audience here is asking, just to wrap up this session, is asking if Russia and China would intervene to bring peace, and how do they have to offer in that direction?
It's a good question.
Are you trying to feed your dog better but stuck between overpriced fresh food and low quality kibble? Hi, I'm Dr.
Just quickly address the China matter. China has not supported Iran to the extent that Russia has already. What we saw, and what I wrote in the Dances with Bears summary of the Russian decision-making, was that there was a telephone call, and I'm looking through my papers to get the words right, between China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi and Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. By the way, there's no telephone call between President Putin and President Xi. Excuse me, why not? President Putin has telephoned MBS in Saudi Arabia. He's telephoned the leaderships of Qatar and UAE. He has not telephoned President Pezeshkian. He has not telephoned Prime Minister Netanyahu, as he did last time in the June war. But when you look carefully at the difference between the readouts of Lavrov's telephone call with Wang Yi last, Saturday, and the Chinese, what Lavrov said, he said was, quotes, they condemned the large-scale military strikes launched by the United States and Israel against Iranian territory. Okay, then Wang Yi says that the Lavrov requested the call, the Chinese took the call. This is very unusual for the Chinese to say, we didn't call, you called us. Why? Why show that degree of difference? And China declared, said Wang, has declared, consistently upheld the purposes and principles of the UN Charter and opposed the use of force in international relations. It's unacceptable for the United States and Israel to launch strikes on Iran during the Iran-US negotiations. That's what Wang Yi said on Friday, Saturday. But I'm looking now at what Mao Ning pardon me for not having the right Chinese pronunciation. She's the foreign ministry spokesman in Beijing. And on March 2, so yesterday, she was asked one question after another. She didn't even repeat that the United States and Israel were guilty of aggression. She simply said the US and Israeli strikes have no UN Security Council authorization and violate international law. Yeah. China is deeply concerned over the regional spillover. There is no support for Iran in what's her name? Mao Ning's remarks.
Okay. Nico, you can.
So he kind of continues to go, and Nima and the man that's talking, they kind of go back and forth a little bit. I would say Nima's whole thing on that is more correct in the understanding of how China is. For a bit of context, when I was in high school, pretty much all my friends were Asian. They were, one was from South Korea, and then most of the rest were from China. And they had come over to do schooling and learn English and be in another country and, learn skills like that. So,
and you took China.
And I took Chinese and, got to know my teacher from China who had actually lived during the tough times under Mao and how his parents were affected by that. So, and, when I asked him how China is now compared to then, he said very quickly and firmly, it is much better than it was now. And he really actually encouraged me to go live in China because that's how much better it was. I don't think people quite understand that China is not a communist country anymore. Yes, they still have the Communist Party leading, but the way that they do things there is not quite that way. So to get to what was discussed in that video, well, why isn't China making these very firm remarks like Russia is? Well, to be, not that I mean to be mean to Russia here, but China is a bit more smart when it comes to these things and is very careful about their phrasing, their wording, and how they come off on the international stage. If they were to make very strong statements very clearly condemning both America and Israel, it would tell the world very firmly which side China is on. Now, if you think about it from China's perspective, that would mean that now China is the enemy to America, which is not quite ideal at this time. And the reason being is around the time when the Ukraine issue was like really starting to go forward and ramping up, and China decided to start kind of making remarks towards supporting Russia and saying that, they had the right to do all that. Around that time, if I recall correctly, we started instigating and poking and prodding with Taiwan again. I think people need to understand that Taiwan is kind of our pressure lever that we pull anytime China starts being a little too headstrong on certain issues pertaining to the West. And so anytime we don't want them to be in the picture or, offer that much support, we instigate things in Taiwan to pull their attention away from things like Ukraine. And I would imagine the same here in Iran. So this whole thing of China merely pointing to the international law, the UN Security Council, things like that is very by the books for them and helps keep them as a neutral party, while probably, as Nima was suggesting, behind the scenes, behind closed doors, they are probably siding with Iran here. I mean, the fact that Iran is allowing Chinese boats in through the Strait of Hormuz and allowing gas still tells me that they are on good terms and that there is still a connection.
Well, yeah, I mean, as we said, they gave them weapons, they gave them, they have interests there because of the Belt and Road Initiative. So again,
if you're expecting just a country like China to have more Western kind of structure in which they speak, you're not going to get that for numerous reasons. And that doesn't mean, I mean, what I don't think was really understood is actually they were condemning in a way what America and Israel did, because they said, well, you didn't follow the international law and the procedures. So that's your whole attack is basically not lawful, is basically what they were saying, which is for China is, again, quite condemning because they're big on international law and following those things. Again, let's not forget that it was both Russia and China together that wanted to call a Security Council pertaining to this very issue.
Yeah. So anyway, I hope that helps you understand why China was saying these things according to what Nicholas understands about China. So anybody have any questions? Anything you want to ask before we wrap this up? Anything you want to say, please go ahead and comment in the chat, and we'll try to answer if we actually know the answer. So we'll do that, and then we've got to wrap up because it's been an hour and a half. So anybody have anything to say, go ahead and put it in the chat.
Yeah, if you have any questions about Asia and what's going on there, I'm more in tune to what's going on over there more than other places. I tend to be more interested in the history and current events there now. So I've been following that.
If you have any questions on anything we talked about, please share. If you have any questions on prophecies, go ahead and share that as well if you have any questions. Okay. So give it a couple of minutes, and then we'll again, thank you again, Taro Man, for your $4 super chat sticker. It was very generous of you. Appreciate that.
One last thing I do want to mention is that Japan has made a statement kind of pertaining to the Strait of Hormuz and the pressure that they foresee happening in the next 6 months. Basically, their prime minister was saying that she was concerned and saying, well, if this doesn't, fix itself, we're going to be out of oil and gas in like 6 months.
Yeah.
So I imagine the government in Japan is probably panicking a bit, given everything. And I would not be surprised if calls are being made from countries like South Korea and Japan and probably Indonesia, countries in Indonesia, trying to plead to Trump to stop and figure out a way to smooth this over, because they're going to suffer the consequences here before too long.
Okay. Well, we have to wrap up. So you all, if you don't have any questions or anything, we're going to get going here, because it's been a while, over an hour and a half. So I hope this was helpful to you all and informative, and you got an update on what's happened over the week. Thanks so much for watching, for sharing your thoughts in the chat, for all of your support. Appreciate it very much. God bless you all, and I'm sure we'll do this hopefully each week to catch up on things, and of course I'll have other videos out as well. Thanks again. You all have a blessed day.